Hey, we're back. We're over here, seeing what's going on. We're just gonna check it out, watch, and go from there. It looks like they had a rough night. We got tattoos everywhere. This is the what, this is Alameda. How did the tattoos get on there? I mean, the graffiti get on there, those walls. Hmm. All right.
Low price for 3 years? I mean, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Being shown by these officers, they are not taking those people into custody. They just want them back on the line, including those who are in a position where they should not have been, and being brought back to join the crowd. On the right, you can see officers continue to move in. This is the ground live view of what's happening here. On the left is a live view from Air 7, Alameda, and Aliso at this point. Again, we saw the 101 freeway has been shut down through downtown Los Angeles. The southbound side was completely empty. The northbound side, cars were still stopped there. I imagine at this point it is shut down in both directions. I don't know why they would just stop the southbound and not the northbound. So until we have a chance to break away, we assume that neither side is making its way through downtown at this point. Let's take a quick peek as things look like they are a little calm right now. So it's a little, nope, traffic moving both directions. So that's good news. No one has made their way onto the roadway, as we have seen in the past, and that is good news there. Let's head back to the demonstration and see what is happening. More flashbangs, and that person is now in custody. It looks like the exact same person, now taking his bag away and putting him into cuffs, into some zip tie cuffs or some, yeah, and he is now in custody. So you can see these officers dodging, batting away bottles being thrown at them. This person, I don't know whether they, this person re-engaged something back in the crowd and did something else, or whether this is just a continuation of what they saw before. But this is the person that, lying on the ground now, had breached the line, had taken an officer's helmet, and then it seemed was going to be dragged back into the crowd, but is now once again in custody, lying on the ground. Looks like they're on stilts as well. So the officers are likely going to work to get those stilts off of this person. And now they're cutting his pants off. Now cutting his pants as the confrontation continues on the front line of this line between demonstrators and officers. And again, things remain very tense. The push is constant for these demonstrators to go backwards. And anytime you see a crowd start to be forced into a situation where they are bunched up like this, you have the potential for some very dangerous situation. If something were to happen and this crowd were to panic and take off, then you're...
This is Google Pixel 9a with Gemini. It's free at Verizon, with plans starting at $30 a line. And this is Nicole asking, where the heck are you?
This commercial is just too much.
Very dangerous. You can see on the right this person in stilts now being taken into custody on the ground and in handcuffs. So we will continue to keep an eye on that, and projectiles continue to be thrown at these officers, just one after another. Water bottles, some of them full, some of them open. We have seen water, we've seen confetti, we've seen silly string be thrown at these officers, who are maintaining their composure, slowly but surely putting these demonstrators where they want them to be, on the sidewalk, around the cars, into the street. And again, you can't help but be struck by the number of bottles of projectiles being thrown at these officers. Of course, they are in tactical gear. It's not going to do a whole lot of damage. But when tensions are high and you're trying to deal with a crowd and you're hit in the head, in the face with any kind of projectile with weight like that, it's not going to lead to a good outcome. So they're doing a great job of maintaining composure, trying to de-escalate, doing their best, getting this crowd back away from the detention facility, and that crowd continues to bunch up here in the middle of Alameda. At least 1,000 people, could be several thousand gathered in this area. Again, we had two demonstrations today. One that began in Boyle Heights, made its way here to the Roybal Detention Federal Facility here. The other was set to begin at 2 o'clock at City Hall, just a couple blocks away. It looks like these two crowds have now converged into one massive demonstration. But until we have our eyes back on City Hall, I'm not sure whether anyone's left over there or whether this is it. The bulk of the crowd is in this one location now, which has been the center point of unrest for the last 3 days in Los Angeles. It began Friday. Arrests were made at a local Home Depot. People were not happy about that. They gathered here downtown at the Federal Building. And there were discussions about whether there were inhumane treatment, the inhumane treatment of detainees inside this facility. Reports that women, children, babies were being held without beds, without meals, just snacks and not proper sanitary accommodations. 4 local members of Congress attempted to tour that facility, as is their legal right as members of Congress. They were denied entry into this facility to see what is going on. That is against the law. Trump's administration, this is twice now, we have seen them deny members of Congress access to federal detention facilities, they are permitted by law to show up intentionally unannounced, so that if there are any violations happening inside, they don't have time to clean those up. Those have to be on display, and these members of Congress have to be allowed access. It happened back in May in New Jersey. Members of Congress were not allowed access. They were denied. The mayor of Newark was placed under arrest. He was later set free and charges were dismissed, but the Trump administration then filing charges against a sitting member of Congress saying she had assaulted members of ICE. The video appears to show the exact opposite, but that will be played out in court. And then again, yesterday, Jimmy Gomez and Norma Torres leading a delegation of local congresspeople to enter this facility, and they were denied access. They are now asking the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, to initiate an investigation into why that would happen. But again, you have an administration and Kristi Noem and a Department of Homeland Security that has been combative to any checks on their authority in this situation. And so, once again, we will see how this plays out. But when the higher power is the authority you're trying to check, that makes it a little difficult. And we saw those 4 members of Congress denied access against Luke Correa was one from Orange County, 2 members of Congress from the Inland Empire, and Jimmy Gomez, who represents downtown LA, including this very detention center that he was trying to gain access to. So things appear to be a little calmer now. It looks like the line has now been gained of where they wanted to back this crowd up to. It looks like the intersection of Temple and Alameda is completely filled with people, demonstrators, out on the streets today for the 3rd straight day, angry with the Trump administration amid more ICE raids around Los Angeles. The detention, the administration again says they are picking up gang members, violent criminals, but as we have seen, those sweeps also pick up just members of society who are not members of gangs, who are not violent criminals, whose only crime has been a misdemeanor to enter this country illegally or overstay a legal means of coming here. And so there is a lot of concern that there's a lot of manpower and a lot of firepower being implemented to pick up people of this of Los Angeles, day laborers, workers, members of the garment district, just factory workers who we saw this last week picked up through violent, unmarked raids in these situations. And so that has people questioning whether it can be believed when the Trump administration says they are only picking up gang members and violent criminals when you see the garment district raided, or you see Home Depot day laborers taken into custody, as we did this weekend in LA as well. So it looks like things have stabilized as of now. We are getting ready for our 3:30 edition of Eyewitness News, and we will continue our coverage here. But
I don't really like committing to things. I'm scared. But when Verizon announced that I could lock in a low price for 3 years, I mean, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Can you hear me now?
as we get ready for the news, I think we're going to gather our reporters and gather our resources, continue to stream this coverage, but if anything breaks out, we will break back into live streaming coverage of what is happening now. Day 3 of unrest and protest in Los Angeles amid continuing ICE raids across LA County. For now, we will sign off and join you again at 3:30 for Eyewitness News at 3.
Wow, it's still going on. It's gonna get crazy now.
Spend taxpayer dollars cleaning up a mess that could have been prevented. Under President Trump, when we get back into the timber business, which up to 30 years ago, we were one of the great timber producers in the world. The communities thrived in these rural communities. We had lumber mills, we had manufacturing, we had furniture makers in this country. All of that went away when we stopped harvesting our own timber. And today we import about as much timber as we used to harvest ourselves. If we can get back in the timber business, that could really help on the balance of trade, reduce imports from foreign countries, and have American jobs. But to make that all happen, again, under President Trump's leadership, we have to get back in the timber business and get back in the game. And when we do that, we have to make sure that we're doing prevention, not just fighting fires after they all get out of control. And so again, working with OMB and others to make sure that we've got the budget for doing the prevention work and the forest management upfront, reduces the expense and the cost on the back end of fighting these massive fires. But again, coordinating across all of our 5 different major firefighting groups today, it's like having 5 generals in the field. They may have different strategies and different tactics. They even have different pay levels. Brooke and I are working to make sure that regardless of which service and branch that you're in, that you're going to have a similar pay, that we're going to have everybody equipped with the right technology to protect them when they're out in the field. Just basic stuff that they don't have today that we were giving our military 20 years ago in terms of, and then using technology to be able to identify fires when they first start. I mean, with the infrared, satellite, drones, I mean, there's technology where we can pick out a fire when it just barely begins and it costs us nothing to put it out versus when it scales up and becomes these massive fires that endanger communities, lives, and our firefighters. So President Trump, of course, has got a common sense strategy. He's empowering all of the leadership that's standing up here today for us to go get this job done. It's going to get America back in the timber business. We're going to put out fires when they're small as opposed to when we can't control them when they're large. And we're going to have revenue coming into the federal government from those timber sales as opposed to those timber leases to the private companies, as opposed to revenue going out through FEMA after the fact when we're cleaning up the mess. So the whole thing makes complete sense. And Brooke and I and Christy and Russ, we're all excited to go out and implement President's vision.
And we have some of the best timber anywhere in the world, and we don't use it. We've freed it up. Lee Zeldin's done an incredible job in that regard, from environmental restrictions that are ridiculous. And a lot of it's been freed up. The rest of it's being freed up. Some areas will continue to protect, but we're going to be freeing up most of it. And again, we have some of the best in the world. And when I hear you say that we lost more in fires than we produce, it's so crazy, because we shouldn't lose very much at all. I could say we shouldn't lose any if it was perfect, but it should not be ever like what we've seen. We're sending billions of dollars to California all the time because obviously in California they are not doing a good job in any way, shape, or form.
This is Eyewitness News.
So with that, I'm
breaking
heading
news.
for Bragg right now.
Good afternoon. Now on Eyewitness News at 3, breaking news. Day 3 of unrest in downtown Los Angeles. Another large protest underway right now with National Guard soldiers on the front lines. I'm Joey Rand. More than 1,000 people have gathered across 2 locations in downtown LA, one outside City Hall, the other outside the Roybal Federal Building Detention Center, which you are seeing right now. It's been the center of protest beginning on Friday night. Within the last few minutes, we have seen chaos break out. That line of LAPD officers now, I believe, has moved in to move this group back away from the entrance to this facility. As we see a vehicle moving through, this has been a problem ever since these, and the back window now broken out. Any vehicle trying to make their way through these crowds is being met with a lot of anger from these crowds. And again, we've seen a lot of broken glass. That back windshield shattered out as this angry crowd did allow them to make their way through at first, and then it was happening quick, and we see another skirmish here on the front lines. This has been happening throughout the last 20 to 30 minutes as the LAPD and the National Guard decided to back these folks away from the entrance to the detention center and push them back. We believe that that large gathering outside City Hall made its way here to the federal building, and these 2 crowds converged right outside the entrance to the detention center. That was too much for law enforcement to handle. The call went out to move these folks back, and slowly they have pushed them back down Alameda Street to the intersection with Temple. Throughout the way, we have seen people on the front lines on the demonstrators' side step up and fight back against the police. That has led to batons being waved, struck, flashbangs, and pepper balls being sprayed and shot into this crowd. We see one person in custody on the right side of your screen. Another person being taken away in handcuffs. We saw a person earlier break through, breach that police line, get into a skirmish with an officer, steal his helmet, and then be dragged back into the crowd on stilts. Moments later, he was once again back behind the police line. He too was taken into custody. We have a camera angle on the right side of your screen. This is a live picture back at the Federal Detention Center, where it looks like some people still remain there, but the large bulk of this crowd is now in the intersection of Temple and Alameda. Bottles, projectiles have been thrown at these officers at a near constant pace, and the officers have responded, at times swinging their batons, at other times firing those gas bombs, flashbangs, trying to get this crowd to move back, get them under control. They have shown incredible restraint, at times some incredible provocation by this crowd, getting in their face, and very few people have been taken into custody when it could be a large number of people who have been very antagonistic against this line. Here we see one woman, looks like limping, injured, or just putting no weight on themselves, making themselves more difficult to take back into custody as they are dragged away now in handcuffs away from this line.
I don't really like committing to things. I'm scared. But when Verizon announced that I could lock in a low price for...
Man, why'd you stop playing this?
The police line. On the left side from Air 7, you can see what is happening from above. That police line now blocking Alameda Street, not allowing access. And this crowd is, it looks like it's a little thinner than it was just about 10-20 minutes ago, which makes me curious about where the large bulk of this crowd has now gone. If they've made their way back around towards City Hall, if they're just backing off in this general area. Yeah, they are spreading out a little bit in this area, but it looks like they're making their way back up Temple, possibly back towards City Hall. This is a volatile situation. It has been for about 72 hours now. It began on Friday with several ICE movements, raids they pulled off. This is on the other side of Alameda, back towards the 101, which for a short time was completely shut down. So this area around the entrance to the facility is now blocked off by the LAPD and had been guarded by National Guard troops. That is another topic of discussion, which we'll get to momentarily. But it began Friday night. There were ICE raids, some of them at Home Depot, taking day laborers into custody. The Trump administration says they were targeting gang members. They have not offered proof of how they determined who was a gang member, if the people they took into custody were indeed gang members. We have seen in the past mistaken identities, the Trump administration mistakenly taking people into custody, at one point mistakenly sending them out of country to max prisons in other nations. We saw several people sent mistakenly to a supermax prison in El Salvador, with the Trump administration promising they would never make it back to the United States. In one case, Kilmar Abrego Garcia was now brought back. He is on U.S. soil once again, but he is still in detention now. The Justice Department manufacturing some charges to press against him that date back to actions from 2014. So we'll see how that plays out in the court of law, which is something a lot of these people were not afforded the right to. No due process, habeas corpus had been suspended as well. And so here we see more people gathered at different points of downtown. This is a large group that has now been broken up, splintered into separate factions in different locations, blocking several streets. And again, as we say, this is a tense, tenuous situation playing out, and we'll see how this goes as day will turn into night. We saw last night more problems on the streets of Los Angeles. Now, the federal agents, the federal troops who are here, the National Guard, they were federalized yesterday by President Trump. 2,000 soldiers from the California National Guard were taken over by the federal government. This is not an uncommon thing. This happens in past. It has happened in the past. We saw National Guard's troops helping out with the response to the wildfires. We saw them help out with the civil unrest in 2020. The difference in this instance is those were initiated by the governor of California. It is very rare and very controversial to see it happen without the request of the governor. In fact, in direct opposition to what the governor wanted to see happen here. Governor Newsom said last night this was not the right mission, this was not the right move, and said it was intentionally provocative to send National Guards members as federal agents onto the streets of Los Angeles. We have seen civil unrest play out since then. We saw the National Guards soldiers on scene here guarding this building today. They have not largely been involved in much of the confrontation, although earlier today we did see them form a line with riot shields, pushing those protesters back and initiating some confrontations there, as we have seen that line approach, recede, and then approach the federal building throughout the afternoon. We do want to welcome in our law enforcement expert, Bill Thomas, who has helped us out so many times in situations like this. Bruce Thomas on the phone. And Bruce, what can you tell us about what you're seeing play out here? It looks like they have cleared out Alameda Street and are now gathering this crowd in the middle of Temple and Alameda.
Yeah, from Air 7 HD, what we're seeing is that they have created a operational area or a safe zone in front of the Metropolitan Detention Center and the federal building on Alameda. You know, maybe a Temple on the south end and, you know, First Street moving upwards. We are seeing use of less lethal weaponry on the crowd, paintball rounds, stun bags, that kind of thing. Maybe even some Marwin rounds. You know, it's a huge crowd. It's just getting bigger.
Yeah, and when we see these officers firing projectiles at the feet of those demonstrators, what is that, pepper spray or those flashbangs? What are they firing into this crowd? Can you tell?
Yeah, years ago, you know, paintball rounds. They have what's called a pepper ball round, and basically what it is it's pepper spray, basically oleocapsicum resin, mixed in with talcum powder, if you can believe that. And then when they hit the ground, it disperses into a cloud of basic pepper sprays. It's a very effective tool. And then they also have paintball rounds that they can mark individuals with. We saw some footage yesterday of a guy who was hit with a green round. They'll look for this person later on and then take them into custody. Interesting.
That's a very interesting tactic, and we'll see if that's being used today. Is this live on the right? This is video. That's what I thought. Okay, so this is some of the video we have seen of those confrontations, the batons being swung. It's pretty incredible and surprising to me, Bruce. We see people take several blows from these batons, and they don't seem really too much worse for wear. These officers are swinging as hard as they can, and they are under attack, and very few people are really going down. It's a little surprising, to me at least, to see them take such abuse and still kind of remain there on the front lines.
Yeah, sometimes protesters will wear multi-layered clothing to absorb the actual shock of the baton. What we're seeing is a lot of the federal protective police officers use what's called long sticks. LAPD, sheriffs, other agencies use what's known as a PR-24. It's a knock type of weapon where you can swing it, hook people up with it. So the long stick is, I don't think, as effective, but a lot of agencies like it.
Right, and by abuse, of course, I do not mean that it is unjustified. As we see people trying to block the path of LAPD cruisers, we have seen this play out several times in the last couple of days. There was video from Friday of a demonstrator being knocked over in the path of a federal vehicle. We saw yesterday folks trying to stop the path of a U.S. Marshal's bus, and that was a dangerous situation, and people standing now in the path of LAPD vehicles getting pushed back, intentionally provoking this officer to run them over, or at least push them back. And now shielded by the trees, we can't see exactly what is happening there. But this officer is not being deterred by people in their path trying to stop their ingress to this area. And so this is now over the 101.
Okay, so we know you're going to watch this demo at double speed. All software engineers do. Buckle up, we're keeping it quick.
Round on the top side, I believe, of that federal building, up the hill from Roybal, as we look down and still see traffic flowing on the 101, and they are, so we are live on the ground here as that cruiser is continuing to try and make their way slowly through this crowd. Again, this is a situation we've seen a lot of people come and break windows, shatter the windshield. We saw a large vehicle have their back windshield broken, shattered out just a little bit ago. That person knocked down by LAPD officers. as these cruisers just continue to face constant harassment from these demonstrators who are on the scene for the third straight day. Bruce, I'm not sure how much you've been watching today, but I have seen a lot of restraint shown by these officers who could take a lot of people into custody, but haven't really seemed to at this point.
You know, at some point you do have to declare an unlawful assembly. You go in with a huge amount of resources and take everybody you can to jail at some point. This is just growing, and it's going to get worse as we come down into the sundown type of night. You're going to see a whole other different crowd that comes out, mostly a lot of agitators who don't respect the free speech amendments that these protesters are honestly trying to do.
Yeah, we can see one person run off there. They were trying to block the path of that cruiser. As soon as officers on foot moved in, he took off and ran back into the crowd. So we see a lot of vehicles. Look at that one. That one has a cone stuck in the lights of that police cruiser. Someone had chucked that at the car, and it got wedged there at the roof, still driving away with that cone on top. So it is a dangerous thing to try and move through here. If you're an officer, I guess the next shift might be coming in, reinforcements being called in, and they are under assault as they make their way through this crowd trying to take their position amidst this very angry and animated crowd that is now making their way to different points. This is not one large crowd. It is several that has been now broken into several groups in and around the Federal Building and City Hall here in downtown Los Angeles. And so now they're making their way on some... Go ahead, Bruce.
Oh, I'm sorry, Drew. I was just going to interject. You know, you've declared a citywide tactical alert with LAPD. There's only so many officers that are on duty. They have stripped all stations, and they're not handling any routine calls. Priority calls only, crimes in progress. And at some point, I believe LAPD is going to be overwhelmed, and you're going to see the National Guard standing shoulder to shoulder with them. And I'm sure maybe Chief of LAPD, he has maybe reached out to the sheriffs and asked for mutual aid.
Yeah, we've been waiting to see if Unified Command was going to be initiated here, especially with the National Guard. I have not heard that has happened as of yet. We do know that unlawful assembly has been declared, and so the LAPD is moving these folks out. But there are a lot of jurisdictions that could be in here working together, Bruce, under Unified Command. We could talk about the California Highway Patrol, the sheriffs, the police department, and now the feds, the National Guard, who have been here. I'm not sure if you've heard about it. It seems to be a lot of different organizations working under separate leadership. I don't know what the coordination is like at this point. Maybe throughout the afternoon it has gotten a little better, but I have not seen anything or heard anything to that extent about Unified Command and direct cooperation, coordination.
Right, Joey, like we talked about earlier today, you have federal property. That's governed by the Federal Protective Police. Then you have ICE, Homeland Security officers, that will basically muster that. Then you have the streets surrounding it, which is LAPD. Then you have the freeway on and off ramps, which they're trying to get on. That's CHP. So then you still have the LA County Sheriffs and the National Guard kind of in reserve, waiting for them to be called.
Yeah, there's a lot going on, a lot of coordination, and it is tough, and we want to see this end peacefully with no destruction of property, no injury, and hopefully no more arrests. Governor Newsom has just tweeted 7 minutes ago, writing, "I have formally requested the Trump administration rescind their unlawful deployment of troops in LA County and return them to my command. We didn't have a problem until Trump got involved. This is a serious breach of state sovereignty, inflaming tensions while pulling resources from where they're actually needed. Rescind the order, return control to California." So now we have a state, California, officially at odds with the federal government, as if we didn't know that before, but this is now a movement, a formal document. The governor has asked the federal government to rescind their deployment of California National Guard troops under federal command. The governor is asking for them to be returned to his command, and this is now a showdown, the likes of which I'm not sure this country has really ever seen before. I think back to the civil rights era and problems in the South and John F. Kennedy ordering the federalization of troops to go against governors there who were not following the laws of the United States. How this compares to that, there are some similarities. There are also some very distinct differences, Bruce. I'm not sure if you can weigh in on the history of this, but your reaction to hearing that the governor is asking for control back of his own California National Guard.
Yeah, Joe, you're 100% correct. That's what Robert Kennedy did. I'm sorry, John F. Kennedy did with the civil rights when they were trying to integrate black students into white schools, and the states were saying no, and he said, okay, fine, I'll have the National Guard escort them. So we haven't seen anything like this, and now to have the governor.
This is Google Pixel 9a with Gemini. It's free at Verizon, with plans starting at
I want my troops back. I want my control, even though they've been federalized, is a huge quagmire.
Yeah, we'll see how this plays out. I know that the governor had he has been busy on social media today, responding to the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. He also tweeted to the citizens of California, said, "Don't give Donald Trump what he wants. Speak up. Stay peaceful, stay calm, do not use violence, and respect the law enforcement officers that are trying their best to keep the peace." So we have some activity here live on the left from Air 7, officers moving in, and anytime you see people scattering in a large crowd at this speed, it can be very dangerous. You see one person there just toppled over in the middle of the intersection. I don't know, are they chasing one person, or are they just looking to get a line across this intersection? Two more people hitting the ground. Again, the danger in a crowd when panic sets in cannot be overstated how dangerous these kinds of things can be. It looks like they are looking to take over this intersection. This is back at Roybal, I believe. Is this down the hill from Temple and Alameda? We're back at Roybal. And so this crowd being pushed back once again. Further on the right side is where we were before the intersection, and now we've kind of spun around our angle, and now they are the LAPD officers are trying to cordon off and push this crowd away from the facility. I don't know where they want them to go. The unlawful assembly order has been given, so this crowd is in direct violation of that order. Obviously, too many to start taking them into custody, but something will happen. We see a detainee there on the right, someone who has several of them. I believe that's the woman who was being dragged down the street, trying to use her body as dead weight to make it difficult to take her away. We have seen a bit of a back and forth, too, throughout all this, with the President of the United States posting to his social media outlet, Truth Social, where he, rather oddly last night, thanked the National Guard for maintaining the peace and order in Los Angeles. Those troops had not been deployed at that point, so there was some question as to what exactly he was talking about, because that did not happen last night. We have seen them on the ground today. But Donald Trump, the President of the United States, posting about an hour ago to his social media outlet, Truth Social, writing, "A once great American city, Los Angeles, has been invaded and occupied by illegal aliens and criminals. Now, violent insurrectionist mobs are swarming and attacking our federal agents to try and stop our deportation operations, but these lawless riots only strengthen our resolve." The president continuing, "I am directing Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, and Attorney General Pam Bondi, in coordination with all other relevant departments and agencies, to take all such action necessary to liberate Los Angeles from the migrant invasion and put an end to these migrant riots. Order will be restored," the president writing. "The illegals will be expelled and Los Angeles will be set free. Thank you for your attention to this matter." So obviously some provocation here from the president in several facets, as we see.
This is an act of
those demonstrators are making their way down the ramp and onto the 101 freeway. This is, I think, a concern that we had seen a little earlier. The freeway had been
You just heard it. This is, I said it yesterday. You got anchor babies. The police officers are anchor babies. You can't just go throw their
and blocking traffic.
parents in jail and then say go back to work. No, they got to go find their parents in Mexico and Venezuela and Honduras. I mean, this is going to be complete chaos.
Now they're going to have to call the troops in from all the outlying areas, and maybe even Orange County, Kern County, wherever they have other officers. And we, the people, are not going to have the services of law enforcement that we would expect. LAPD is on tactical alert. There are no extra officers. CHP will be on tactical alert. There are none. And that's the sad part of this.
Yeah, I don't want to alarm anybody, but the way you describe it, people should maybe lock their doors at this point, because if something happens and you want a police officer to come to your rescue, it's going to be very difficult to get them to your location because there's such a concentration of forces here in downtown Los Angeles.
Yeah, I mean, and we're not fear-mongering. We're just basically saying, unless it's a matter of life or death, the police are not going to respond.
Right, and we heard there have been complaints around town for years about the time it takes for the LAPD 911 calls to be answered and officers to be deployed and responded to calls. Well, the federal government had a similar complaint last night, saying they requested backup from the LAPD. They say it took 3 hours. The LAPD says it took less than an hour because it's not an easy thing to gather troops for a situation like this at the drop of a hat. You don't have people sitting around in riot gear ready for a large crowd demonstrating on the streets like this. It takes some time. It also takes some time to come up with a plan. Again, that's what we were talking about, Bruce, the lack of unified command, the lack of coordination between the federal government and local law enforcement. This takes time, and it took the LAPD a bit of time last night to coordinate and get things into place.
Yeah, as we see from Arizona and HD, they're allowing them to walk on the freeway. CHP does not have the manpower.
I don't really like committing to things. I'm scared.
Okay.
But with Verizon,
How many times do we got to see this commercial? What's the point? Is this sponsored by Verizon?
Personnel to even open up the freeway is a huge waiting in.
Yeah. I always feel for those people first in line. They were so close to making it through, and now they're stuck there. You hope it's not an urgent situation. Anyone needs to get home. Obviously, people have lives. People have families. They need to get home to their kids. They need to get to work. They need to get home. Perhaps someone's having some kind of an emergency of some sort, and we see some of the drivers now exiting their vehicles. We have seen times people trying to plead with demonstrators to let them through. They need to get through, and it's a tough sell.
I gotta
Once
go to work.
the crowd, the mob has kind of set themselves in place. So here we are. I believe that's the southbound 101 freeway is shut down. Demonstrators are on the roadway surface. The northbound still seems to be making its way through, though certainly not at speed. And as we pan up, we see large crowds gathered at the top of that off-ramp. This started back at the Roybal Detention Center. People have been gathered there since this morning. There was a separate second demonstration that began at 2 o'clock outside City Hall. That was an entirely different operation, a different demonstration, but at some point it looked like the two demonstrations merged. I think the 1,000 or so people that were gathered at City Hall made their way down to the Federal Building and have now joined this crowd, and there has been unrest ever since. Authorities have since shut down Alameda. That is where all those cars, those police cars, are parked outside the entrance to the Federal Building. Here we are at the 101 freeway. It's actually the opposite side of where that large group at Temple and Alameda had been cordoned off, and they may have made their way back around up the other side of Roybal and made their way here to the 101 freeway. Again, this is not a new thing for Los Angeles. Pretty much anytime we see a large demonstration in downtown LA, it makes its way onto the freeway for those large gatherings. I believe maybe, like things like the Women's March excluded. That has not happened from any of those. But these large demonstrations, more people making their way down the on-ramp here, and law enforcement, hands on hips, Bruce, there's not a whole lot they can do. They are outnumbered. They don't want to start a riot when they're facing these kind of numbers. And at this point, just kind of watching and letting things play out.
Yeah, that's all you can do. You can hold your skirmish line. protect the areas, the geographic area that you want to protect. In this case, the federal building, the Metropolitan Detention Center. But for the most part, you can't go into the crowd and push them back any further. You're just outnumbered by so much. The other thing, too, is if you'll notice in some of the shots, you'll see people with green hats. Those are ACLU lawyers and or personnel, and they're monitoring everything that's happening for everyone's rights.
Yeah, and we certainly know that this city is facing a massive budget shortfall. A lot of that has been from payouts for situations where city officials have not been handling themselves correctly, be it police or otherwise. And again, that's something that has to be thought about as these law enforcement officers play out the execution of their duties here. Again, you have lawyers, you have cameras, you have people watching, and if something goes south, people will make sure that they are held accountable for actions here. I do know that ABC's Matt Gutman is on the ground and has been covering this. We have been waiting to go to a report from him. Okay, that is the ABC News camera on the right that we are watching right now. Do we want to go to that Gutman piece right now? Okay, all right, so we will hold off on that and continue to watch what is playing out here. That large crowd, you can see the overpass of the 101 is lined with people watching. The roadway, the northbound side is now shut down as well. Demonstrators hopped the barrier and have now breached the northbound side, which is left passage through downtown Los Angeles in both directions impassable. The 101 is now shut down. We can see Matt Gutman reporting there on the right side. Here's another ground level camera, and you see that cameraman. Same with our cameraman as well. Camera operators, they are in the thick of things to bring us these shots. It is not an easy job, and we thank them for putting themselves in this situation because it is not easy. The gas-filled air that the demonstrators are breathing, they are breathing as well. That photographer is now down. I can't imagine they're going to that is just too close, and they got that person out of there. But again, this line is being held outside the detention facility. This line now on the freeway has now stopped traffic in both directions on the 101. Bottles and other projectiles are continuing to be thrown at these officers, and they continue to send non-lethal rounds into this crowd to try and break it up, back it up, and calm things down. That is not happening at this hour. We will see how this plays out again. Day 3 of demonstration and unrest in downtown Los Angeles. This is the third day we've seen it happen at the Roybal Detention Facility, the federal building in downtown LA. Yesterday we saw unrest in the cities of Paramount and Compton. That began outside a Home Depot and a DHS facility where a crowd had gathered protesting actions of DHS and the Trump administration. That bled over across the river, across the 710 freeway into Compton, where a car was lit on fire, windows were broken out, law enforcement and fire officials were under assault from thrown projectiles as well, and that finally was broken up throughout the night. But it was not an easy task, and it was a long and violent night in certain situations. Here come 2 LAPD, I believe, cruisers down the ramp. 3 cruisers now down the ramp, and we will see their reception. It is not going to be pleasant. Projectiles being thrown at their vehicles as they pass. Are they getting onto the freeway? Let's see if we can see from Air 7. Can we pick up those 3 cruisers that just made their way onto the freeway? Which side did that happen on? I believe it was coming down that ramp right there. They would be to the left. It should be towards the left onto the road surface. Do we see on the other side of this overpass?
Treat yourself to rich Ghirardelli chocolate and luscious caramel.
Maybe they're underneath. I'm not sure where they have gone, but at some point, Bruce, they are going to look to take control again of the 101 freeway, and it is going to be a difficult task to do that. Those could be those cruisers. I'm not sure. Those look a little larger. But Bruce, how do you regain control of the 101 freeway after a scene like this is playing out?
Well, Jordan, you got a huge problem. Those were 3 CHP cruisers that were at the top of the ramp, but you've got hundreds of vehicles that are just stuck there. So to get resources to the problem is going to be a whole nother matter. You're going to see CHP mustering miles and miles away, and then they're going to have to come on the wrong side of the freeway, and they're going to have to take control of this. But it's going to take hundreds of officers, and that takes time. And meanwhile, you've got the freeway shut down, at least in the south end, and probably the north end.
And here we go. We see some officers on foot now making their way through the cars that have been backed up, and they are headed towards the front line of this to try and get people. You see one person clapping. I thought for a moment they might have been clapping at the officers moving in to clear this up, but it is they are. I think they might be clapping with the demonstrators. And was that bottle just thrown from the car? Okay. So I think the northbound side is back open again. Cars seem to be moving at speed. I'm not sure how that cleared off like that, but the 101 north is open, at least a lane or two. The southbound side is completely shut down, and we'll see once those officers on foot reach the front of these cars, and now they are allowing cars to go through single file here. Is that an officer directing traffic, or is that a demonstrator? That just... I think that might just be a demonstrator who are now trying to get these cars out of there. I think they want to free people up and just take over the entire freeway, maybe on foot, and clear out these cars. That's an interesting one. Bruce, I've never seen that before.
I have not seen that before, too, but I'm sure there are leaders in the group who don't want to inconvenience motorists, and they're like, hey, at least open up one lane, let's get these cars out of here, and then we can shut down the freeway.
Yeah, oftentimes the point of this is civil unrest, to block the everyday execution of life in a city like this. That doesn't seem to be the case. It looks like they are going to allow these cars to clear out, and police are now going to stop those cars. They probably want some space to deal with here, Bruce, I'm guessing, just to let the cars in front of them move out and then give them some free space to move in on these demonstrators?
Yeah, they're formulating a plan on what to do. If they can keep one lane, at least 2 lanes open, push the demonstrators off to the side, it's a win-win for everybody. They get their civil unrest notification, LAPD gets the freeway open, as CHP does, and the motorists are moving on their way.
Yeah, and once again, we feel sorry for that front line, those last cars who thought they were going to make it out of here, and now once again have to stop. I think if we can pan over to the left, are these cars that are backed up? They're all making their way out of there. Yeah. Okay. So they're siphoning down to a single. Nope, they've been stopped once again. So whoever's idea it was to let them through has been overruled, it looks like, and now they are being stopped by more demonstrators who are not allowing these cars to get through and out of there. And now there is a discussion between the demonstrators, and they are once again being allowed to move through and out. So it's never a single mindset in a crowd like this, but these folks are being allowed to move out and off of the 101 freeway, get out of this little logjam. That is not everybody who is stuck. That is just the front, maybe 20 or 30 cars who are. Some of them are being allowed, and some of them are not. It looks like some decision making to go in the crowd there. We will see how this plays out. There is a group of officers just behind these cars who are going to, I think, wait until the cars that are being allowed to clear the way off the freeway, and then we will see how they plan to get these demonstrators off the surface of the 101 freeway, because they have now shut down traffic for some time now, and those officers now headed the other way. Curious to see what the plan is going to be, Bruce. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, Jory, one of the things that always is mind-boggling to me is with the advent of social media, I'm hoping they're putting out things, stay away from the Hollywood freeway, stay away from Alameda, stay away from downtown LA. I would hope this is happening, but yet we see hundreds of cars driving down the street.
Yeah. Hopefully traffic apps can help people as well, that you do not want to go through this area. If you can avoid downtown, surface streets, and the freeway, avoid it if you can, because it is going to be a slog to get through, and it's going to take some time. Back at the Roybal, this is the intersection of Temple and Alameda. The crowd continues to be in the midst of this, in the middle of this intersection. We do see that bike. I think there were 2 motorcycles down on the line. That one remains down on the ground. I think they tried to drag one away. I did not see how these vehicles made their way into this position, but that is a motorcycle Bruce, I don't think that's a law enforcement motorcycle, right? That's
No,
not CHP.
it was somebody's personal bike.
Yeah.
They took the driver into custody and the bike was left there.
Right. So now we see Alameda is blocked off if you're coming towards the view of this camera. Temple is blocked off to the left. And then if you travel up Alameda is where the view from Air 7 is now looking, the overpass of the 101 freeway. I don't see those officers on foot on the freeway as of right now, but it looks like traffic is still being held up. So the last few cars, the last few vehicles who were stuck in that little group are now making their way through, and we will see what happens. We do want to bring into this discussion Gabe Santos, who is in Air 7 overhead. We now have two eyes in the sky on either side of your screen here, looking at two different locations. One at the 101 freeway, one back at the Federal Building. Gabe, what are you seeing right now?
Well, Dre, we're just getting overhead back on the freeway side, and I've been watching the pictures from our second Air 7 along with you guys, but also monitoring the radio traffic from LAPD and CHP. We have quite a multi-pronged situation here. You have the skirmish line near the Federal Building that LAPD has been working, and you have the situation on the freeway, which now CHP is getting involved in, and CHP is helping out with, because you have this crowd on the freeway, on the, I believe those are the southbound, I think those are the northbound, southbound lanes of the 101, and you have this large crowd now on the freeway. In total, LAPD is saying that at least the immediate size of the crowd here is about 3,000 people. So you have that situation. And if Rob wipes out the shot and goes to Alameda and Temple, a little further down, that's where our other news Air 7 was looking at, where we saw those motorcycles. We heard reports earlier that someone, not law enforcement, actually drove that motorcycle that we saw on the ground and a second motorcycle into the skirmish line. There are reports of officers that were injured in that. We did hear that those officers are in stable condition, have been stabilized, and they are being stabilized by EMTs at the scene here. So that's that situation that LAPD is working on. And then you have this situation that keeps kind of ebbing and flowing here with CHP figuring out what to do with these protesters now on the southbound lanes on the freeway. You have a couple of cars that were able to go through, and we'll see what happens from this point on, because there was that group of law enforcement that made their way onto the freeway, and a lot of protesters cleared out when they saw that first flow of CHP officers come through and approach them, and then we kind of lost sight of them. I'm not sure if they're under the bridge or if they have. We're going to do a orbit here in Air 7 HD and actually look for where that crowd of that initial first push of CHP officers went to see where they have ended up now, or if they've actually retreated. So we're going to look for them, and we're going to monitor what happens here now that this protest has made its way onto the 101 freeway near Alameda.
Yeah, I saw those officers clearing the motorcycles. I wonder if we can go back and check our tapes to see if we got the incident itself of how those bikes made their way into that situation, because again, as Gabe just said, there are reports that officers were injured in that incident driving those motorcycles into the skirmish lines with those LAPD law enforcement officers. And so we'll wait and work to see if we have that. Again, this is all playing out as there is a battle brewing between the state governor of California and the president of the United States. Last night, President Trump federalized 2,000 members of the California National Guard. Today, the governor sent official notice that he wants to regain control of those soldiers. So there is now a direct confrontation between the state and the federal government. That, I think, is rather unusual. I'm not sure something like that has ever played out, although our history is deep here in America, and it certainly could have happened. We referenced the civil rights era when John F. Kennedy had to federalize troops to go into the South with governors there, George Wallace and others who were not following federal law. But I don't know if it's played out exactly in the way that we have seen here at the direct opposition of a governor. We will see what happens with that request. As we approach the top of the hour, we want to reset here. You're watching Eyewitness News here on ABC 7. We were scheduled to finish our broadcast at 4 o'clock, but situation on the ground in downtown Los Angeles has warranted our continuing coverage of unrest in downtown LA. This is day number 3 of civil unrest, protest, demonstration, and confrontation between those demonstrators and members of the federal government and local law enforcement who have taken to the streets in direct opposition to ICE raids and the handling of immigrants by the Trump administration. We are going to stay with you on air here for the time being to see how this plays out, but demonstrators are now on the 101 freeway. That's the shot from Air 7. On the left side of your screen is the southbound side of the 101, taken over by demonstrators on the road surface. The right side is the 101 northbound, which is once again flowing. It had been shut down several times this afternoon, but the northbound side is moving again. It looks like at the top there might be some cars who are working to turn around. I saw some vehicles facing kind of sideways on the 101 a little further. This is an overpass overlooking all of this where a large crowd has gathered. There have been several focal points today, one outside the federal building where we have seen confrontation and unrest for the last 2 days here in LA. At the Roybal Federal Detention Facility, there was confrontation yet again today, this time for the first time with National Guard soldiers guarding the entrance to the facility, at one point with riot shields in place, pushing that crowd back. LAPD officers were called in, and they have now cleared that section of Alameda from the opening, the entrance to the detention facility. A large crowd has been cordoned off to the intersection of Temple and Alameda. This is another large crowd that is on the overpass looking over the 101 freeway as they see demonstrators down on the road surface below. Things have been tense. We saw large demonstrations yesterday as well in the cities of Paramount and Compton, and again last night at the detention facility at the entrance, though things were a bit calmer for a time period. On the right, we see more people making their way down the on-ramp and onto the surface of the 101 freeway. We've been waiting to see how the LAPD, how the CHP plans to handle this situation. As of right now, it looks like the demonstrators pretty much have free reign on the southbound side, being left unchecked and gathering, their numbers now growing on the surface. And we see a large crowd up above and around watching what happens. This is not a first for downtown Los Angeles. This happens actually rather frequently. When we see a large demonstration of this size and intensity, they often make their way onto the 101, and it has happened yet again today. At the bottom of your screen, you can see the roof of City Hall. That is where another demonstration began at 2 o'clock today. We saw 1,000 people gathered in Gloria Molina Grand Park and the street passing through there. They made their way down the street 2 blocks to the Federal Center, where they joined the other crowd demonstrating there. Our focal point, you can use that building under construction as a reference point. This is Temple and Alameda here. The crowd has still maintained their presence, going face to face with that line of officers who have now blocked off both Temple and Alameda, heading back up towards the federal building. We will see how this plays out. We have cameras on the ground as well as 2 in the air. There is the motorcycle in question. Gabe Santos, who is in Air 7, which we'll go back to in just momentarily, has said that he heard that 2 officers were injured due to that motorcycle, and a second, which has subsequently been dragged from the scene. It might still be somewhere out there, Gabe. I'm not sure if you can have eyes on it, if that is the bike in question, but there were 2, and officers were injured.
Yeah, Jory, it was those 2 bikes that we were just looking at that are on the ground, and we did hear from earlier reports from LAPD that those 2 bikes actually drove towards the skirmish line and then fell down, and those bikes hit officers. Officers were trying to make careful use of my words here, but the LAPD radio traffic did allude to the fact that those officers were injured, and they were treated at the scene by EMTs who are part of LAPD that were already here. So they were treated, and they remain at the scene, and they have been stabilized at this time. So we don't have an exact number exactly of how many officers were hit, but we do know that a few of them actually were hit by 2 motorcycles from the outside. So not law enforcement motorcycles. These were, we can go out on a limb here and say, protester motorcycles drove into the skirmish line of LAPD
right now.
and it caused injury to a couple, at least, officers here in the downtown area.
Yeah, and again, I don't think this was, people have in their mind of someone driving a motorcycle into a crowd. I don't think that's what happened here. I think the motorcycle, again, we're looking for tape because we saw the aftermath of those motorcycles being dragged away from the scene, but I'm not sure if we have actual video of the incident itself. This was not, I believe, a high-speed movement with those motorcycles, as we see those officers now moving in on the 101. We see some cruisers, that is highway patrol, and some officers in tactical gear moving in to try and retake control of the freeway. There were cars that were allowed to be make their way through and exit the area. There are still some vehicles who are stuck now behind all of this, as those officers now make their way through to a rallying point, a gathering point, to figure out what their plan is. And cars are now traveling backwards, it looks like, up the 101, southbound, the wrong direction. This might just be someone tending to their child in the back seat. Yep. Getting back in their vehicle and trying to get out of there. Again, people who have no intention of being part of this situation, being forced to deal with it because they are just simply driving down the 101 freeway and dragged into this situation. Again, you see someone with a small child in the back seat. This can be a really scary situation. You don't know how these are going to play out. I don't know if we have Bruce Thomas still on the line, but these can be very scary situations when you're talking about civilians stuck in these situations. That was a woman with a small child in the back seat, now stuck on the 101 with an angry group of demonstrators on the overpass and the surface itself, and law enforcement trying to regain control, Bruce.
I don't really like committing to things. I'm scared. But when Verizon announced that I could lock in a low price for 3 years, I mean, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, Jory, it creates a huge problem. You have innocent people in vehicles, some with kids, maybe a medical emergency with a child of some sort, and then you want to get out of there, but they can't. So that's what law enforcement's going to do. They're going to open up this freeway, basically shut down the area, get everybody out of there, and then retake this freeway. I think CHP, just by the sheer numbers, has said, you know what, this is not acceptable anymore.
Yeah, and it looks like they are now going to move in, but a decent number of people have now gathered on the freeway. Those officers are going to be outnumbered. We'll see. It looks like some of the leaders of this group are out front, kind of rallying their troops as the officers are going to emerge at some point from beneath this. We see some already in tactical gear lining the entrance to this underpass here, and with some reinforcements coming in from behind them. We'll see what they plan to do, whether they're going to form a skirmish line here and start backing these people up and back them up the on-ramp the way we've seen them be pushed back from the entrance to the federal building today. Again, we have several locations around downtown Los Angeles that have been taken over by demonstrators, some of them peaceful, some of them not peaceful. We have seen skirmish lines, we have seen projectiles, a lot of bottles, a lot of objects, and again, 2 motorcycles driven into that skirmish line, and we've heard 2 officers were injured as well. We're awaiting word on their status and how they are doing, and what happened to those who drove those motorcycles or pushed or somehow got those bikes into this situation, how that happened, and what ensued. On the right side of your screen, we have a live look from the ground of what is playing out on the surface of the 101 freeway. We can see those officers in shadow. We know they are under the overpass there. They have a view that we cannot get from Air 7, and so this is a really good look from 2 different angles of what is happening on the 101. A lot of police vehicles in the background, CHP gathering. We have officers in the surrounding streets, as well as they try to maintain order in what has been a day filled with disorder from citizens of Los Angeles and around, who once again have brought themselves out to the streets en masse to protest against the actions of President Trump and his departments, Homeland Security and ICE. We are at a bit of an impasse here. We're waiting movement from one of these 2 sides, the California Highway Patrol. Those officers gathered there. We will see what they attempt to do. For the most part, the demonstrators have just been allowed to remain on the 101 freeway and shut down traffic. The northbound side had been interrupted several times. That is now flowing, although a little bit slower, as you can imagine. When you're driving through downtown and you see people standing on the freeway on the other side, it's going to slow you down a bit. But there are looks like no people walking on the northbound side. That is now entirely relegated to the southbound side, and A lot of people watching what's happening here. Again, as we said, this is not the only location where people are gathering. There is another group outside the federal building, just a short ways away from this gathering, at Temple and Alameda. National Guard soldiers had been guarding that building this morning. They had been aided by some LAPD officers who had joined the line there, and then it was the LAPD, in fact, that began moving those people back. Once a tactical alert was initiated in the city of Los Angeles, the LAPD moved in and wanted to get them away from the federal building, and that has now happened, but people still remain on the streets. Again, as we mentioned, this is all playing out with a battle going on between the federal government and now the state of California. Governor Newsom said last night that President Trump, against his wishes, federalized 2,000 members of the California National Guard. Well, he has now officially sent notice to the federal government that he wants to regain control of his soldiers from the National Guard. In fact, there is a group now of Democratic governors, 22 governors from the United States have now put out a statement, and I'll read it now if nothing else happens while we're reading movement on the 101. It reads, President Trump's move to deploy California's National Guard is an alarming abuse of power. Governors are the commanders-in-chief of their National Guard, and the federal government activating them in their own borders without consulting or working with the state's governor is ineffective and dangerous. Further, threatening to send the U.S. Marines into American neighborhoods undermines the mission of our service members, erodes public trust, and shows the Trump administration does not trust local law enforcement. The statement continues, it's important we respect the executive authority of our country's governors to manage their National Guards, and we stand with Governor Newsom, who has made it clear that violence is unacceptable and that local authorities should be able to do their jobs without the chaos of this federal interference and intimidation. Again, that is from a group of Democratic governors from 22 states backing Governor Newsom from California when it comes to President Trump.
All you wanted was to add a column while planning your next sprint. Maybe it's time to move to Monday Dev. Here are 5 Monday Dev features to plan, track, and ship software fast. Manage your sprints on flexible Kanban and Scrum boards. Fully customizable, no need to call your admin.
Hello?
Performance dashboards, roadmap views, and capacity planning all included. Full visibility, zero micromanaging. Use the hierarchy views to link multiple boards and view different teams. All from the same place, no additional.
Guard, 2,000 troops who were federalized last night. We see some movement here on the 101 freeway. It looks like people are beginning to move away from those officers. I don't know if they are beginning to make their way in. Gabe Santos is overhead watching this all play out from Air 7. Gabe, what are you seeing from up there?
Well, you have these very dynamic ends of this protest and this crowd. You have this bridge here. I believe that's the Alameda Bridge at the top of your screen. Over the 101 freeway, and you have a lot of CHP, a contingent of CHP that keeps on piling up and adding to the reinforcements or bringing in reinforcements to that skirmish line that's under that bridge. That's actually the Los Angeles Street Bridge, to have a correction for you there. And I'm seeing about maybe 20 CHP cars lined up on the southbound 101. Also, a little side note here, we have a Black Hawk helicopter from the Department of Homeland Security also orbiting the area. We saw a similar helicopter, if not the same one, working the scene yesterday in Paramount. So that helicopter may be being brought in to bring in additional resources here. In any event, back on the freeway, you have a number of CHP resources pouring in, a lot of calls for help being made initially by LAPD. LAPD was initially requested to help with the freeway situation here as they saw the crowd move towards the freeway. And LAPD noted that they don't have anybody to spare. They've already asked all additional resources to report to the scene in front of the federal building where Alameda and Temple cross. And that's where we saw that situation with the motorcycles. We're still waiting a little more detail on what happened there. But the word, at least from officers on the ground, is that those motorcycles were driven into that skirmish line. As you mentioned, we don't know what speed. We don't know whether or not they plowed into the skirmish line or anything like that. It doesn't appear to be so, because it appears that whatever injuries were suffered by those officers in the skirmish line, they appeared to be mild, if not moderate, at most. They were treated at the scene, and they are what we've heard as in stable condition now. We don't know a specific number of officers, but it does appear to be more than 2. So that's the situation there. Back on the freeway, you have a different department. So you have LAPD working the surface streets, and now CHP working the freeway now, and they're bringing in a lot of additional resources. As I mentioned, about 20 cars, 20 CHP cars already backed up behind the traffic that had initially been stuck here. You have some people being lucky enough to turn around and go the wrong way on the freeway and get off that way. But looking out the window of Air 7, I can see that the 101 South is shut down at the 110, and they're forcing everybody onto the interchange to get onto the 110, either in the north or the southbound lanes. You can see that CHP blockade there. They even have cones down now, which gives the indication that this is going to be a long-term closure, which I think, considering everything that we've seen here today, that's probably safe to be assumed. And there you can see the number of CHP units that have kind of made camp there under the Main Street bridge here. And now you have that contingent of CHP units, CHP Special Enforcement units under the Los Angeles Street bridge, at least making themselves known to these protesters, probably making verbal commands out, giving the order to get off the freeway. And obviously you can see here by the static situation that we're starting to see. And now another flow or so of people making their way down the street. That looks to be a sign with that a couple of other protesters are holding there. And just from what we've seen here in the past few minutes, it appears to be kind of a ebb and flow of people that kind of flow onto the freeway, and then another influx of CHP officers will come in, kind of scare a few people off the freeway, and then things will calm down for a little bit, and in those calm moments, more people will kind of flood back into the freeway. But at least at this point, you just have the southbound lanes of the 101 closed right now due to this protest, and the northbound lanes are still open right now. But a lot of CHP units making their way into the area, and LAPD units as well, as Rob, our photographer, swings the camera over to the right. So you can see this Black Hawk helicopter that we believe belongs to Department of Homeland Security that is here now to assist in the operations that a lot of government agencies are involved in here in the downtown area.
Yeah, we actually saw Black Hawk unloading materials to their DHS facility in Paramount yesterday. Weaponry, ammunition, we saw rifle boxes and canisters of flammable materials being unloaded off of a Black Hawk yesterday down in Paramount. This is going to come to a head at some point. Those CHP officers on the freeway are going to make a move. It's just a matter of when, once they have the proper number of reinforcements in place. And we will see what happens, whether these people decide to go without a fight or whether there's going to be a problem that plays out on the surface of the 101. We surely hope that that is not the case. We do know that the LAPD's Central Division put out a post. They said 2 people riding motorcycles attempted to breach a skirmish line in Alameda and Temple. 2 officers were injured after being hit by the motorcyclists. Both riders have been detained. Officers are being treated at scene by medical personnel. So if they're being treated on scene, they likely weren't injured too badly, as Gabe reported, and that will continue to play out. We also are expected to hear from LA Mayor Karen Bass in just about 12 minutes. I think at about 4:30, the mayor is expected to hold a press conference. We spoke to her live on the air last night at 11 o'clock, and she said she disagrees with the federalization of California troops, although she did say she was willing and ready to work with people like the border czar, Tom Homan, who has said some inflammatory things in the past. He went on Fox News yesterday saying that LA Mayor Karen Bass should thank him for making her city safer with these ICE raids. Okay, on the ground covering this all, in the thick of it, has been ABC News' Matt Gutman. We want to go to him right now, who has been outside the detention facility, the federal building, all afternoon. Matt, what can you tell us?
This is Google Pixel 9a with Gemini. It's free at Verizon, with plans starting at $30 a line. And this is Nicole asking, where the heck are you?
Heard that mention of that skirmish here, and at least one motorcycle, possibly a second, we actually physically saw it breaking through that skirmish line. It's unclear if that motorcyclist was just trying to do a wheelie, like turning around, and lost control of the motorcycle, or if it was intentional. But several of those people who have been detained are right there behind us. Unclear what and whether they will be charged with any crime. But you can see this is what it's looked like for the past, I'd say, an hour or so. That line of officers from the LAPD pushing everybody back and using a tremendous amount of non-lethal force. You can see those flashbang canisters, the sponges, 40 millimeter like this, that they fired at people just to continue to push them back. I don't think I've seen this much use of non-lethal in a very long time. We've also seen significant number of rocks, bottles, projectiles that are very dangerous being hurled at the LAPD on this side of the skirmish line. Right now it's at stalemate, Jerry, but there is something I just want to show you. Is like that police skirmish line that you saw behind me started probably 400 yards back, almost at the 101. And I don't know if you can see, but the amount of debris and how far it goes back, all of what you're seeing was either thrown by protesters or fired by the LAPD. So a really significant interaction here. And obviously, as you saw from the hundreds of protesters that are still here, it's probably not going to end anytime soon, Jerry.
Yeah, we watched that line be pushed back down Alameda and saw a near constant volley of those non-lethals at protesters. We watched all afternoon those federalized National Guardsmen and women guarding the entrance to the federal building. Are they still there? Can you tell if they're still on scene from your vantage point?
I believe that they are. The last time when we got pushed back, they were here. I would be shocked if they left. So, it was federal law enforcement plus California National Guard. I would say a pretty fair mix. One of the things that surprised me, Jory, that I hadn't seen in a while was right front and center on the second story near the shrubbery was a sniper. It looked like a federal law enforcement officer. But a sniper was right there. So far, at that point, it seemed like a very peaceful demonstration. Law enforcement had deployed some sort of less than lethal, perhaps some pepper spray, and certainly some flashbangs. But what happened here was a step above. That was different. We saw some really significant physical interactions between the LAPD and these protesters. The size of the rocks and projectiles, I'm going to see if I can try to find another one for you, that were thrown were significant. This is a piece of concrete or road that was picked up and chucked. You can see some of the sharper end stones over here, much larger ones than that were hurled at police. So this is something that I haven't seen quite some time in downtown LA. It was very intense, much more calm at the moment. But what's unclear right now, Jory, is how this thing ends.
Yeah,
back to you.
Thanks. You've covered a lot of these. You know them pretty well. When you say that it's something that you haven't seen before, that is certainly saying something. And we have said that these officers and these vehicles have been under assault.
I don't know if I just lost you on the...
Yeah, that is not overstating the case. Matt Gutman from ABC News on the ground, and we appreciate his reports, and we'll continue to check in with what he is seeing down there on the ground as much as we can. Again, we say these officers are under assault, under attack. That is accurate. Every time we see a vehicle move in, reinforcements be moved in, they are assaulted. They are have projectiles thrown at them. We saw the back window of a Chevy Suburban shattered on live television as they were moving in to that scene. Back to the 101 freeway, just a short distance from where Matt is doing that reporting, we see that crowd continues to maintain their position on the southbound 101 freeway. It looks like there are some people now on the northbound side. One or two people have jumped the barrier and are now on the northbound side, which I think has now been shut down. Let's go to Gabe Santos in Air 7. Gabe, we see no vehicular traffic on the northbound. It looks like those officers, CHP, might be moving in right now on the southbound side as well.
Yeah, well, it looks like two things happened here. You had CHP move in on the other side. You have flashbang grenades going off, possible other less than lethal fire going off right now. It looks like tear gas canisters as well. But as far as the freeway is concerned, I'm not sure what happened first. If there were individuals that made their way onto the northbound lanes of the 101, or if CHP actually blocks traffic on the 101 first, because I see a little further back, we don't have to zoom in on it right now, but a little further back on the 101s, if we go a little south from here, there's a CHP unit that's actually blocking traffic right near an exit. So it's directing traffic to get off the freeway a little bit further back. And then,
turned around and going,
Robert Photographer swung the camera back that way.
Turning right around and going
but
the other way.
You also saw under the Los Angeles Street Bridge, those CHP units are spanning now both sides of the freeway. So you have CHP officers in SWAT gear on both sides of the freeway, and you had for a time some protesters climb the barrier there and get on those other lanes, but then it looks like they've now cleared and kept themselves to one side of traffic. So I'm not sure if that was an intentional decision on CHP to shut down both lanes of traffic. Going out on a limb here, I would imagine that's because CHP eventually, when they do decide to make a move and possibly move forward on these protesters and get them to get off the freeway, they don't want the danger of anybody jumping onto the other side and getting hit by a car. So that may be the tactic that CHP is using in terms of blocking both sides of the freeway now to get their officers on both sides of the freeway and maybe make a move here to clear the freeway.
Yeah, 100%. You don't want your officers at risk of vehicular traffic when you make your move. If we still have Bruce Thomas on the line, I do want to ask him, we see this group of CHP officers gathered beneath the overpass. I obviously think it's, I think I know why, but if Bruce could just talk about whether they are under their gathering to protect themselves from the crowd that is watching from above and the side so they don't get hit by anything from above.
Yeah, you're 100% right. They're seeking shelter underneath the freeway until they decide they want to move forward. Because one of the biggest concerns is you have people on the overpass, which we've seen them throwing objects at law enforcement. So they do want to protect themselves because all they have to protect themselves is a riot helmet with a face shield. So I'm sure there are some people on an overwatch situation.
I don't really like committing to things. I'm scared. But when Verizon announced that I could lock in a low price for 3 years, I mean, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. So here we have two groups, and you think about, as we see this confrontation set to take place, the backgrounds of both of these groups. You have demonstrators who feel like law enforcement has invaded their community and taken away members of their community, sometimes members of their family. And on the other side, you have law enforcement who likely got into this profession to help people, keep them safe, and suddenly find themselves at odds and doing their job with the people they are tasked with protecting. It's a tough situation. You understand the motivations from both sides, but again, you hope we're not pitting citizens of our city against each other, but here we are. The LAPD, CHP, local law enforcement is tasked with maintaining peace and order, and here once again on the streets of Los Angeles and the freeways moving through Los Angeles, we have disorder and unrest as demonstrations have now stretched into day 3 in Los Angeles. All of it against the movements of ICE and DHS and the Trump administration against the immigrant community here in Los Angeles and Southern California. We saw unrest in San Diego this weekend. We saw unrest in Washington, D.C., in New York City. This is happening across the country as President Trump is trying to fulfill his promise to go after those in this country illegally. Some in his administration say they are going after the dangerous elements, those who have committed crimes, those who pose a threat, who are violent, who are members of gangs. I think it's safe to say everyone in society wants to see those people gone, not on the streets in any, whether they're immigrants or not. We don't want violent gang members. Nobody does. The criticisms that have come is that people who are not violent have been swept up in this. There are people who are residents, legal residents of the United States who have been swept up in this. There are citizens of the United States who have been swept up in this. Some of them sent out of the country to supermax prisons overseas and struggling to get back. And so there is this push-pull. There are people in the administration, Stephen Miller, chief among them, who have said they want to see every single person in this country without permission to be taken out, and they do so with violent warlike tactics, moving in with weapons of war against people we saw in the garment district this weekend in Los Angeles, from day laborers at Home Depot. And so there are, it's never as clear cut as just simply people are committing crimes and we take them out of this country. It's the methods, it's who you're targeting, and that is where a lot of this ire has been drawn by some of these demonstrators. But again, Even in California and Los Angeles, elected officials are saying we do not condone violence. We heard that from Mayor Bass. We hear that now from Governor Newsom. We hear that from members of Congress and elected officials and law enforcement. Nobody is condoning the violence or the assaults on officials, be it local or federal, and that is where some of these problems have been arising over the last 3 days, as this is now, again, day 3 of unrest in Los Angeles. ICE, through a spokesperson, has put out a statement today. I'm going to read it to you here. It is long, but I'll read you the initial statement. It says, quote, irresponsible politicians continue to push dangerous and misleading rhetoric that puts communities and law enforcement at risk. Even the LAPD referred to violent riots yesterday as, quote, peaceful protests. It continues, Americans can look at the videos and images and see with their own eyes that they are dangerous, not peaceful. It continues, ICE and its federal partners are doing their job, enforcing immigration law and removing criminal aliens from Los Angeles communities. We have arrested a domestic abuser who assaulted someone with a firearm and a child rapist. In defense of these heinous criminals, masked rioters have made it their mission to injure and maim federal law enforcement officials. Make no mistake, rioters committing crimes will be arrested and held accountable. Let's go back to the situation on the 101 freeway. It looks like the scooter that one person had been using to ride up and down, kind of taunting that line of CHP officers in tactical gear, has now been taken into custody. The scooter was just dragged out of the way, and that person is now face down on the pavement being placed into handcuffs. The rest of the crowd, this is on the northbound side. This is where this group of officers is lining up and moving their way down. And you can see some folks on the other side, the demonstrators, lining up in front of the Jersey barrier, confronting them as well. There's a large crowd behind them, and vehicular traffic does appear to be moving on. No, that is the side street. My apologies. That is up above, I believe Aliso, overlooking the 101 freeway. But here we go. So officers from the CHP are now moving in. There is now officially a skirmish line on the southbound 101 freeway, and they want to get these demonstrators off the freeway surface. It appears as if they don't have to exert much pressure on these officers, on these demonstrators, as they are backing up. Unhappily, it seems, we see one gentleman there in black who is shouting at them, or a woman, demonstrator in black who is shouting at them, going back and forth, very agitated, very animated. But that group is now slowly backing up. They are going to be have to be turned around, backed up, and turned around to go back up the on-ramp to get them off the surface of the 101.
I don't really like committing to things. I'm scared. But when Verizon announced that I could lock in a low price for 3 years, I mean, yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Fuck, man. I don't want to see a commercial no more, man. I'm tired of seeing this fucking commercial.
Viewing all this from Air 7, let's go back up to Air 7 and see what you're seeing from up there, Gabe.
Yeah, having the luxury of having this airborne view of this situation, you can really kind of see what CHP is trying to do. They have made a coordinated attempt of shutting down both sides of the freeway. And as more resources got onto the scene, they have a call out to all of CHP, basically. So they're sending anybody and everybody that is available to come to the downtown area and help quell the scene here now that it has spilled onto the freeway. So CHP now, they have closed both sides of the 101 freeway at Los Angeles Street, and we saw that line of officers start to make their way down the southbound lanes of the 101. And it looks as if they are trying to make a circle, or at least a semicircle, around some of these protesters so that they are not just pushing them back and pushing them further up down the freeway. They're trying to get these people off of the freeway. And you even saw somebody on a scooter that was possibly taunting officers that eventually maybe got a little too close to an officer, or maybe came close to striking an officer with that scooter. They were immediately taken into custody. So CHP not taking any chances with anybody, and they are slowly and methodically pushing these protesters. The idea is off the freeway as more resources get to the scene here. We're going to see that start to develop, as you see right there. Groups of about 10 or so CHP officers in full riot gear moving down. Those are going to be the northbound lanes of the 101 freeway, and they're making this line around the group of protesters that we see there. And then slowly and methodically, you see this line of officers on the northbound side. Those are the southbound lanes, but those protesters are facing north. You see those officers there very slowly and methodically pushing that line of protesters, hopefully, off the freeway and onto surface streets.
Yeah, thank you, Gabe. Let's bring back in Bruce Thomas, our law enforcement expert. It seems like they are just taking one step at a time, Bruce, slowly pushing back on this group of demonstrators. I don't think they want to start anything, get too violent, go too fast. They are slowly, methodically making their way to clear the surface. We saw yet another flashbang go off above this crowd. But talk to me about what the mindset is of these CHP officers as they are now face-to-face with these demonstrators. They want to get them off the surface, but they don't want to start any violent confrontation.
You're 100% correct, Tori. What they're doing is they're negotiating. Look, you made your point. We've got to open this freeway up. We're going to use a skirmish line to slowly, very slowly, push you back off the freeway. We don't want to use force. We don't want to take anybody to jail. But we want you to comply with our request.
Yeah, and it does seem to be effective right now. We have not seen the necessity for batons. We see some pushback here. It looks like some folks are just kind of dead weighting their bodies up against this crowd, forcing those officers to push them back. But they are moving back. They are locked arms now, arm in arm, and don't want to be removed, but they are slowly pushing back. So the officers will take a couple steps, gain that line, reset, move forward again, and hopefully they don't want to start any major confrontation here again. All of this is playing out on the streets of Los Angeles. We are awaiting word from the mayor of this city. Karen Bass is set to address her city any moment now. We were told around 4:30 was the time to get ready for her to speak. We have not heard from her as of yet, but we are awaiting word from the mayor, again, in direct confrontation with the federal government. President Trump kind of name-checked her personally last night on his Truth Social outlet, his social media outlet, writing, this is last night, if Governor Gavin Newsom, that's a favorite of the president to write it that way, of California, and Mayor Karen Bass of Los Angeles can't do their jobs, which everyone knows they can't, then the federal government will step in and solve the problem. Riots and looters, the way it should be solved. So he's saying the problem was riots and looters. Said it will be solved the way it should be solved. He was also recorded on camera today at a press briefing being asked about a couple things with what's playing out here. Rules of engagement for the National Guards members who are now federalized under his control on the streets of Los Angeles, what their rules of engagement. They're carrying around, these soldiers can be inserted into war. So they're carrying the weaponry as such against citizens of Los Angeles. What the rules would be for them to employ those deadly means. The president just said, we want to keep peace. He was asked about the proclamation that Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth put onto social media, saying if the violence continued, then members of the U.S. Marines would be deployed against U.S. citizens. That can only happen under use of the Insurrection Act. And the president today was asked what would be deemed an insurrection, and he neglected to answer specifically. So here we go. It looks like a smoke bomb thrown on the surface of the 101. And let's go back up to Gabe. Those demonstrators now kicking that smoke bomb back towards the officers. It's like a macabre game of soccer with this thing right now. But they are making a move, trying to get these folks off the freeway.
Yeah, I can honestly say I've never seen a soccer game between protesters. And that is one protester being taken into custody. One of those CHP officers got behind him as he was going in for that kick and just pretty much tackled him. And that's what CHP is doing here. With that soccer game going on with this tear gas canister going back and forth as those CHP officers try and kick it back into the crowd, and then the crowd kicks it back. You're seeing CHP kind of slowly pick off some of these protesters that get a little too close or get a little too aggressive in their movements. And there you see another CHP officer again kicking that canister into the crowd, and a protester now throwing it back towards the CHP officers. So this is this is kind of a dangerous situation here, because you basically have projectiles being thrown back and forth as these protesters now, at least with that tear gas canister that has put a little bit of distance between that skirmish line. As you can see, that person being taken into custody earlier, kind of wrangling with those CHP officers. They are just out of frame.
Is your AI platform falling short on innovation and costing more than expected? Struggling to capture value and achieve breakthroughs from analytics projects? What if you could combine predictive and generative AI at a cost 20 times?
The fuck off my station.
CHP with that tear gas, obviously, it's not something you want to breathe in. It causes your eyes to burn. It causes you to cough. So that pushed back the protesters just a little bit. Those CHP officers wearing full gas masks, so they're able to kind of tolerate it a little better. If you don't have a gas mask, if you just have any other kind of mask, you're going to be getting the full effects of that tear gas canister. So that's what's creating a little bit of that buffer. As you can see, that CHP officer in the middle, he's trying to, as Bruce Thomas was saying, he's trying to negotiate with some of those protesters in a very, kind of matter-of-fact way, saying, get back, put some distance here, and continue moving off of the freeway. As you can see, this one individual waving an American flag, continuing to yell at some of the officers. I have a feeling if he gets too close, some of those CHP officers might pick him off as well. And that's going to be the process. You saw that skirmish line that was on the opposite line of the freeway. It has now crossed over the center median, and they are doing this very coordinated approach to pin these protesters off the freeway. And, you see someone else being... and someone else being taken into custody right there very quickly. And there's someone... Okay, it looks like another CHP officer grabbing another fellow officer there. Probably got a little too close for comfort. But you could see just how different the picture looks than what it did 10 minutes ago. Earlier, you had a very wide semicircle of these CHP officers, and now they are narrowing in. They are pushing all of the protesters off of the freeway, which is the goal. Yeah. And they are doing this in pretty quick order. And anybody who is getting a little bit too close or a little too aggressive, they're just picking them off and arresting them right then and there. Yeah, and this is all part of the plan.
One by one. Gabe, thank you. I want to bring in Sergeant Daniel Keene with the California Highway Patrol, who joins us on the phone watching the CHP execute this clearing of the 101 freeway. Sergeant, thank you for joining us. Can we talk about what's happening right now on the 101?
Yes, sir. Right now, we currently have our CHP special response team that responded to the area to assist with getting the protesters off the freeway. Accessing state highways, it's dangerous. It's not the right spot for a protest. And it puts the protesters, the motorists, and our officers at risk. And we are going to move to get them off the freeway and make arrests. If officers start to take objects and are getting hurt, or other people are getting hurt, it's not going to be tolerated.
Yeah, we have seen that several times now, these officers coming under attack and taking several people into custody. Can you tell us a little bit about the training in situations like this? We have seen tremendous restraint from a lot of these officers who have been under attack for much of this day, facing these people off who are screaming at them, throwing things at them, and yet maintaining control and trying to de-escalate. How important that is and what you're seeing in terms of execution of that training.
Yes, our special response team goes through additional training, and we are put through situations like this. And this is where what separates us is the professionalism. And we're going to stay calm in the situation and use the appropriate amount of force when necessary to effect an arrest if you have to. So we fully support everyone being able to voice their First Amendment rights in the right location, and we will support that. But on the freeway is not the spot for it.
And we're seeing it play out once again, another person taken into custody. A lot of times in these situations, we see unified command go into effect. Has that happened? And how does the presence of National Guard troops who have been federalized kind of change that as it plays out here today?
The CHP is always prepared for mutual aid to other law enforcement when it's needed. And that's just what we go based off. We are the state team. So if there's other areas that need help, we are going to send resources if it is requested through the proper channels to do that.
Sergeant, can you tell me how it's going to play out tonight once these protesters, these demonstrators are taken off the freeway? How it's going to be ensured that they won't make their way back onto the freeway tonight? Will that be CHP? Will that be local once you get off the freeway and turns back to city's jurisdiction?
It's going to be both. It's a fluid situation. CHP is there. We are going to protect any state facilities and our roadways and our highways. And if anyone attempts to take over the freeway, we're going to take swift action to get those roadways back open and keep everyone safe to continue on with our mission of providing safety, service, and security.
Yeah, I know this operation has only been happening for a little bit. Do you have any reports of injuries from any of your officers from anything today?
I don't have those numbers right now, if there was any, but there's always that possibility that officers may get injured, and we hope to prevent that. We hope that people do not throw items at our officers, and that it's just done peacefully, and they go to areas that they can voice their opinions.
Okay, so we know you're going to watch this demo at double speed. All software engineers do. Buckle up, we're keeping it quick. Here are 5 Monday dev features to plan, track, and ship software fast. Manage your sprints on flexible Kanban and Scrum boards. Fully customizable, no need to call your admin.
Hello?
What?
Okay, Sergeant
Sorry
Daniel
about the
Keene with
commercial,
California
guys.
Highway Patrol. Thank you so much for helping us
All right,
out here.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
I know
guys.
it's a busy day for CHP, law enforcement in general, as once again we are seeing people take to the streets of downtown Los Angeles. This
All right,
is
guys, that's it for now. I'm heading out. Catch you guys later. Have a good day.
Briefing at any moment. We were told it was set to happen at the bottom of the hour, and we are approaching 15 minutes past that point. And we will see what she has to say. But, you know, anytime the mayor at this point is now going to step in front of a camera, we will likely see her side by side with, you know, smoke bombs and unrest and flashbangs and arrests and officers under attack. So no matter what the mayor says, this is all playing out under her